Greetings and welcome to my review of Halloween Party by Agatha Christie. Halloween Party features Belgian detective Hercule Poirot, here approaching retirement, and novelist within a novel, Agatha Oliver. It was written in 1969, making it the second to last novel featuring Poirot to be published in Christie's lifetime. Halloween Party is also loosely the source of the 2023 film A Haunting in Venice, even though it doesn't take place in Venice. It starts with Oliver attending a Halloween party with her friend Judith. The party is arranged by Rowena Drake for local girls. Naturally, Ariadne's fame as a writer of murder mysteries is a topic of conversation, and one of the girls, Judith, mentions that she has seen a murder. She is regarded as someone who tells a lot of tall stories without any basis in fact, and nobody pays much attention until she's found drowned in the apple-bobbing bucket. A few days later, Ariadne Oliver requests Poirot investigate, and he arrives on the scene and begins to learn that this typically sleepy English village is in fact littered with mysteries and murders, some of which he suspects could be the source of Judith's claims to have witnessed someone being killed. The bulk of this book is taken up with Poirot interrogating those in attendance and then further investigating the numerous other mysteries he discovers in the process. These include a missing au pair who may or may not have forged the will of the woman she was taking care of and then disappeared, a lawyer's clerk and former forger who may have been involved with the au pair but has since been murdered, possibly as a result of his womanizing, and two further local murders. Little wonder that a great many characters opine that crime in modern Britain is running out of control, even in her sleepy little villages. Judith's younger brother Leopold also turns up dead, and the suspicion here is that he was blackmailing the killer. Poirot's further investigations naturally will solve the case, and I will try not to spoil whodunits too much. The finale here includes Poirot being right, naturally, and a race against time to prevent a third murder, and just a little bit too much of the police sitting around while other people are doing their job. But even with that considered, the weakest part is, for me, the supposed genius teenage girl being just a little bit too naive to convince. And one nursery rhyme quoting character who apparently could have solved the case 3-4 years before Poirot was involved. But generally it is a satisfying yarn with a decent ending and a smattering of solid characters and interesting plot threads. This is the first Poirot mystery that I've read featuring Ariadne Oliver, who seems like a slightly awkward self-insert. Certainly, for me, she was bordering on immersion breaking at times, but she worked just well enough because the character seems ill at ease socially anyway. It probably therefore works about as well as it can. It's interesting also when you have a character who could so easily serve as the author's mouthpiece, and you couple that with a dominantly like Poirot who would certainly never be reticent towards voicing his own opinions, that when you have all of that, Christie still feels the need to have so many characters voicing the same opinion, that the more permissive 1960s Britain is leading to a more violent and dangerous society. This book would have come out hot on the heels of the infamous Moors murders and on the UK abolishing capital punishment. Some characters support, others criticise the prevalence of social workers and other progressives in the criminal justice system, but the sheer volume of criticisms make it fairly clear where Christie's own sensibilities lie. All our mental homes are full, overcrowded. Children don't come home from school because they've accepted a lift from a stranger, although they've been warned not to. Yes, there's a lot of that about nowadays. In this age of increased crime that we live in, doing a child in isn't something to be startled about nowadays. A lot of people who ought to be under mental restraint aren't under mental restraint. No room at the asylums. Young criminals who come before the juvenile courts, excuses had to be bought for them. Broken homes, negligent and unsuitable parents. Too much mercy often resulted in further crimes. From a writing perspective, I'd say that only the fact that the different characters use very similar terminology, it makes it weaker than it might have been. Because if two people say the same thing in the same way, it feels parroted, that they have both learnt from the same source, in this case the author, and that they've learned by rote, rather than forming a personal and educated opinion. But the biggest draw for Halloween Party is, of course, Poirot himself. The reviewer on the back cover of this issue calls this a triumphant comeback for the character, and while Christie was writing less prolifically in this period, it was only 3 years removed from his last appearance. But he is older and clearly more tired than in the previous examples that I've read, but still there is something about his movements among the plot threads and characters that feels magical, like coming home to the place where detective fiction belongs. Everything feels comfortable, even as Poirot himself spends half the time complaining about his shoes rubbing. Perhaps the disillusionment that Christie felt with society needed Poirot to return. He's expressly uninterested in the need for justice, especially watered down by the excuses brought to a court defence. Oliver describes him as a computer program, again a sign of the times in the late 60s, and he certainly absorbs the data and then calculates the outcome in tune with his own words, where he declares that his goal is not the subjectivity of justice, but the binary of truth. Part of the Poirot magic is the Christie magic, a flair for a vivid pastoral setting that has spawned 1,000 imitators. In 1969, she writes of an English village that probably hadn't existed since her novels of the 1930s, yet for the most part, the supporting characters ring true, have motivations that seem real, and interactions that feel natural, even as they lay bare the interconnected threads that form their lives, and in the end, the killer's motivation. As an author, Christie does little else. The finale here sees a flurry of shorter chapters, some themselves broken into even smaller sub-chapters, and that's an effective upping of the pace that builds on the sudden jumping between locations and characters. Oddly, the only one not behaving in a way in keeping with the frenetic new pace of the novel is the mystery writer herself, Oliver, who you'd assume would understand the need. Her dithering is frustrating, and it was the first time that I missed the presence of Hastings. Overall, though, Halloween Party doesn't diverge much from the trusted Christie formula, and Poirot remains an engaging lead. The mystery is strong, near a little twee in a country that was actually occupied with monsters like Brady and Hindley, but Poirot embodies the computer's quest for facts, for truth, not opinion, not excuse, not even the shades of grey that can make up justice. This is wrong. This is right. It is interesting too that the killer here avoids that justice system itself by taking their own life when it was obvious that the game was up. The death penalty, abolished in the UK even for murders, was carried out regardless of the now toothless legal system. Against the typical backdrop of an England largely confined to myth, we are presented with a web of characters and plots, but the spider at the centre is not the killer, but the bringer of truth, the ever-enjoyable Hercule Poirot. If you like this video, liking and subscribing is the way to get more of it, and my books, the sci-fi comedy Professor Lovecraft, are all available on Amazon. See the link in the description.
My name is Riley and I'm a student. The first 2 weeks at Sexington University were perfectly normal. I was drunk until the end of freshers when my student loan ran out. Then Professor Lovecraft exploded his lab and my eyebrows and everything changed. My roommate started dying. Aliens invaded, I killed a dragon over breakfast, got stranded in the past and attacked by dinosaurs. I might have committed a genocide, I might have robbed an empire, I may even have saved the world. I really hope next week is quieter. I have an assignment due.